Welcome to another episode of Unexpected Perspectives with me, your host, Mark Segelov. And today we're going to be discussing the importance of raising your profile, also known as improving your personal brand, very much focused on the cybersecurity space as well. So if you really want to know how to take that next level, you should tune in and listen to this episode. And joining me on this episode, I've got a really special guest with me today, Javvad Malik. So welcome, Jav.
Thanks, Mark. Lovely to see you after, 10 years nearly, properly.
Well, we did meet for coffee just before.
We did, yeah. If I thought it would take coming on a podcast to have a conversation with you, I would have reached out a lot sooner.
Well, no, I to be honest, I love doing podcasts, and I think part of why is actually you being one of the trailblazers in that area. You've been in that sort of like sphere for quite a while.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
That's all right. Okay, so what I want to do, maybe just if we just kick off, I'll just ask a simple question. Why should one care about raising your profile? Why should anyone give a shit, for want of a better phrase?
So I think it's something that's very much, I feel, internal to oneself, as opposed to when people think of raising their profile or building a brand, they're thinking often from a marketing perspective. It's like, how can I get as many eyeballs on me as possible? And I don't view it as that. I view it as, what are you doing and how are you self-perceiving yourself? And I think that for me, that helps me build a compass for my career around what am I good at, what am I interested in, how do I bring these things together, and how do I share what I think is valuable. And the idea of sharing is not driven by vanity metrics or like, oh, let's get 50,000 people to watch this video or podcast or what have you. But it's about, hey, I find this useful. And if I was given this content 5 years ago, I would have found it really useful. If you approach it from that perspective, you're going to find your tribe, or you're going to find some people who really resonate with that. And if for nothing else, it's a bit like when you think about something, it's only halfway there, but when you write it down, it really crystallizes it. It helps you go through the process. So for me, like creating content or what have you, it's a process of crystallizing my own thoughts or going on that journey myself. And then, hey, you can come along this journey with me. I think far too often people stand on a pedestal and shout down at people. They're like, this is how you should be thinking about this. This is how identity management should be done. This is how public cryptography should be done. This is what, as opposed to, I think, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I found out. Here's the reasons why I think this. Let's discuss. And I think you get a far more collaborative approach with that. And coming back to your original question, I realize I've already started going off on tangents. Is that when you find out what you want to do and what you're good at, and you start doing that, you first raise your profile in your own mind, and then second, you start influencing the ones closest to you. And don't think about you're trying to change the world. Just think about, even in your team, if you're working a company and there's a team, there's probably one person you go to when you have a problem with, say, the mainframe. Or there's that one go-to person, I don't know how to write this report, how do I phrase this? And they're the go-to person. What they've effectively done, they've built their profile to be that go-to person, because it's kind of like a pushing someone to a point of excellence in a specific field. And I'm a really big believer in that. Before, I was very much like, hey, it's cool to be a generalist.
Yeah.
But I think if you can specialize in something, and that's part of your brand,
how important is you mentioned almost like the self-awareness aspect. How important is it to go on that journey of self-awareness and self-discovery to get to that point that goes, actually, I'm confident in myself of what I know and what I want to share. And secondly, I have a purpose in wanting to share it because I genuinely feel it will help others. And it may help some people, may not help others. And going back to your finding your tribe, that's so important as well. It's sometimes you don't define who your tribe is. It's, this is what I'm passionate about. If you like it, connect, follow, learn. If you don't, go follow something you do like.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's different styles and different approaches, and different people will resonate with different things. If you look at, like, creators you follow, for example, or people you look up to in the industry, they'll be very different from creators I follow. It'll be different from someone else's, or people who they look up to in the industry, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're not trying to, like, it's not a popularity contest, which oftentimes I think people internalize it as. It's really like, how do you connect?
I think that's a good point, actually. We talk about popularity, talk about, often some people look at it from a competitive perspective, when actually, if you reframe your thinking, we're not actually competing with anyone per se. We're actually saying, look, we think we've got something of value to share. It's not because someone else hasn't got something of value to share. It's just you may connect or resonate more with me and my message, but that's fine. Yeah. It's I'm helping others.
Yeah, and sometimes that help comes in the forms of either intellectual help, like, here's how you solve this problem. Sometimes it's just in the fact of, like, here's my perspective on life, or here's something I enjoy, maybe you'll enjoy it too. That's kind of like what movies or entertainment is built around, isn't it? It's like,
true.
You want to share some emotion with someone.
That's a good point, actually. You talk about emotion. How important is it to share, but connecting emotionally with your audience?
I think it's
Please don't cry.
I think it's all about emotions. I think everything. I mean, it's true. We live in a digitally connected world, and nearly everything we do is through computers. And I get there's definitely a big part in our world to be data driven, because the data shows us where to go and what works and what doesn't work. But the data doesn't account for emotions, and it doesn't account for connecting on a human basis. And the problem is, it's like the age-old thing. If you give a problem to an engineer, they'll reframe it as an engineering problem and give you an engineering solution. Yeah. If you give the same problem to a psychologist, they'll reframe it as a psychology problem. And I think we fall into this trap of trying to reframe everything as a technical problem, as this is correct, this is the way to go about it. And you see it in security quite a lot. It's like something like multi-factor authentication, brilliant security control, probably one of the best controls you can do to protect against account takeovers and all that kind of stuff. Terribly thought out as how this impacts a person and the emotional state it puts them in. So if you're logging onto a site, and as a security professional, I love MFA, but if I'm having to log in and then it's like, oh, go get your YubiKey, or go get your phone out and open the Authenticator app and do this, it's not invoking a pleasant emotion within me. This is like effort. This is
frustrating.
It's frustrating. And I think if we can understand that and connect with people on a more emotional level, they will resonate with that a lot better.
I think that's so true. Is sometimes we think about looking at things in perspective. We'd say, look, it's very important to be perspective about things, but if we then see the world through other people's eyes and see their perspective of things, then we are more likely to connect with their real world challenges, their real world issues. And certainly, as certainly from my own experience in security, that's the nugget, because only then will you be able to actually influence in a positive way, because they'll say, yeah, I get it, this helps me.
Yeah. And we in security, people always say, like, we need to talk the language of the business. And kind of like when you unpick it, it's like, make it relevant to someone on the other side who doesn't work in security. And one of our former colleagues, Pete Lyons, he told us that, so he was a cards expert, as you know. He knew everything about, like, how these cards were, like debit cards, credit cards,
He knew his stuff.
And he said, surprisingly, in the UK, the reason why chip and pin took off is when big stores like, the Tesco's or the Morrisons or whoever, someone done the calculations and worked out how much till roll they'll save by switching to chip and pin, and probably time saving there. And that was the driver for them to adopt chip and pin.
I think, I think that's so true, actually. In so many different ways, the conversations you have tend not to be in order to get budget or money, they tend to be, actually, you know what, the driver here is not actually a security driver, it's a cost efficiency driver, it's an optimization driver. It's, as you said, something simple.
And there's a really good quote I heard, and I think it applies to security so well. And the question I think every security professional out there should be asking themselves when they get into this business case or like loggerheads with the business, like, do you want to be right or do you want to be helpful? And I think far too often we're so dead set on being right.
Yeah.
We will pull out these charts like, look, if you have the password this length, it will take a supercomputer 3 seconds to crack it. But if you have it this length, therefore you must have it at this length. And they're not understanding that's not the argument the other person is giving you. They're saying, this is frustrating.
I know, as well as that, I think sometimes it's patience as well required, because often I go into organizations, we all go into organizations, and we kind of like intuitively within half an hour, know what needs to be done. But if we say that because we think we're right, we go, this is what you need to do. They go, they're not there. Their headspace is not there. We have to kind of like, and sometimes it does take time to take people on that journey to go, actually, you know, if you do it this way, I understand, you know, take the time to understand their challenges, as you say, take the time to understand where they're coming from, get in their mindset and build trust. Because, you know, we're talking about branding and personal branding. I think sometimes it's about building trust in yourself as well. So it's about building trust with the people that you're engaging with, so that they come to you because they trust you.
Yep.
They follow you because they trust you. Why do they trust you? Because, for a better phrase, you're being sensible. You're thinking about them. You're thinking about their problems. You're not being this always being right kind of person.
Yeah.
Even though you may be, that's not the argument. It's kind of like, you know, I do know the answer, but hey, we're human. Let's just understand the human dynamic.
Yeah. And actually, I found like these some of these comparison sites where you compare like your insurance or flights for travels for holidays. They have the ability to give you the answer to your result almost instantaneously. But a lot of them deliberately build in a delay where it says searching, looking at British Airways, Virgin Airways, Ryanair, what have you, because that gives the impression that there's a lot of background work being done. And so that instills trust. And it's a silly thing when you think about it. You're intentionally putting in a delay, but sometimes slowing down is the better thing.
Oh, so much so. I have that motto in life, actually. Sometimes it's slowing down to speed up. You've got to slow down to speed up. Often, sometimes there are quick decisions required, but actually it's the tortoise that wins the race in the end.
It is. And you know what? We very quickly hit a rate of diminishing returns. So I don't know if you've ever seen the speedometer versus the paceometer. So like if you can look it up, yeah. So it's like a typical car speedo, like
car. I thought you were talking about like running then or something.
Oh no! I haven't run since I was late for the buffet one morning. But there's like, so the speedo goes 0 to 160 whatever miles per hour, and on the outer ring it says like time to cover 10 miles.
Okay.
So if you're traveling at 10 miles per hour, it will take you an hour. And if you increase that by just 20 miles per hour, so if you're going at 30 miles per hour, that goes from 1 hour down to 20 minutes. I think I'm getting that right. So you get a massive increase at these low speeds, going from 10 to 30 miles per hour. You get a massive increase in efficiency. Now, if you're traveling at 100 miles per hour, that will take you 6 minutes. Now, if you increase it by 20 miles to 130, so the same amount of thing, it only goes down by 1 minute. It only goes down to 5 minutes.
Okay, well done for the maths. I'm just doing it on the back of,
You can look it up. Throw up the graphic and post. Yeah.
To be honest, I understand. I think just to translate that, or just to validate my understanding, is basically if we're looking at short-term gain, then yes, there may be a small impact there. But if we're thinking of the longer term and and that's how life works, then actually it won't necessarily have that greater impact.
No. And you're putting less stress on the engine, you're putting less worries. And like, this is why when you're traveling somewhere and Google Maps says like from London to Manchester, it's going to take 3 hours. And you're doing like 80 or 90 on the motorway for an hour, and then all of a sudden you only see it's 2 hours, 55 minutes. You're like, well, I've been speeding for so long. I'm at the risk of getting fined, points on my license, a deadly car crash, and I've only saved, 3-4 minutes?
Yes, that was. And how many people do that time and time again just because they didn't want to leave 5 minutes early ahead of schedule?
And they end up losing that at petrol stop or whatever anyway. So.
And they're always late. But thank you for coming on time. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Obviously, you've been practicing that theory.
Yes.
Just going back to the personal brand side. So, what do we mean by the phrase a personal brand? So, when we're looking to, we've spoken about communicating. What does that mean to individuals out there? So when we say focus on your personal brand, what does that mean to you?
So to me, that means it's kind of, there's a few aspects to it. One of the aspects I try to think is kind of like word association. Yeah. And so if I say Peter Lyons, like I just mentioned him, immediately anyone that's ever worked with him will think cards expert.
Yeah.
That's what if you say podcast, there's probably like a few names that come to mind immediately. Mark Segelov, Joe Rogan, those kinds of big names.
In that order, of course.
In that order, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
If you think about, say, like Hollywood heartthrob, you probably think these days it's probably like one of the Ryans, Reynolds or Gosling or whatever, kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you think of, and so I think when you think of, and again, it's not like there's only one person that comes to mind, but when you think of certain people, what do you think of? Are they a red team? Are they a really good manager? Are they a really good, auditor? What are they good at? I think that's one aspect of it.
I agree. I think really and that comes back to the self-awareness, really understanding who you are as a person. What are those maybe 2 or 3 traits that you want to be known for and are known for? So it could be the expert in the payment space. It could be a security expert. It could be actually I want to be known for my work in philanthropy or in ESG, or not necessarily want to be known.
Yeah.
It is who you are.
Yeah.
And most people, if you focus on so many things, you get lost. But if you have 2 or 3 core things you want to focus on, then naturally you'll be known for that, and that becomes your almost like your brand part of your brand identity. And I think that's sometimes what people need to just take a step back and reflect. Okay, if I'm going to raise my profile, what does that actually mean? Mm-hmm. It means being involved in the things that you're passionate about, not trying to be things that you don't want to be. Just stay true to who you are.
Yeah, I think that authenticity is such a big thing. So there's so many avenues and tools out there to how you can get your word out there. So we talk about globally outside of your organization. Let's talk about that. And for example, podcasting, it's a great way of getting your thoughts and ideas out there, sharing it with the world. Now, if I think I hate podcasting, but I need to do it to get it out there, it's not going to come off as authentic because I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not like something I like. Maybe I don't like the sound of my own voice, the look of my own face. I know you went through a lot to get over those hurdles.
Still going through it well.
But I think
post-production review for me.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those things. Find out if you like to play the ukulele and write poems.
You know me so well.
Then find a way of bringing those things together, and then you'll be known as a ukulele playing cybersecurity expert. And there's nothing wrong with that. But
food for thought.
It's kind of like another way of carving out your niche if that's what you're looking for.
So we spoke about obviously really understanding. You were going on to that was the first thing. Was there another part to what else about personal brand?
Yeah. So this is something when I joined one of my companies and I was hired as a security advocate, which is basically being a mouthpiece, corporate mouthpiece, or just talking about security in general forms, being helpful. It's sort of like a PR function in many organizations. Yeah. So it's like a hack happens, journalists reach out, can you shed some light on this? And you tell them something which is hopefully helpful, and they then quote you saying, this person from so-and-so company said this, and that company gets their profile raised and you get your profile. Everyone's a winner. Now, the thing with those kinds of things, or generally when you're out there, is if you go out there and say, oh, this company was hacked because they didn't have our product or my expertise, you might get quoted once, but you're not going to get quoted many times again, and you're not going to win any hearts and minds. And I think the worst thing people can do is they make the brand about themselves. So rather than thinking about that, and this is something that Jack Daniel, who's the founder of B-Sides and everything, he told me once. He said, think of it as you've got a spotlight in your hand. He goes, rather than shining it on yourself, no one likes that, shine it on others. And he actually goes, you don't just have one spotlight, you've got many spotlights. Shine it on as many people as you can. Because eventually enough of that light is going to reflect back onto you anyway. And you'll find your profile being raised. But if you actively go out with shining the spotlight on yourself, say, look at me, no one's going to like you, and you're going to be in a very insular bubble.
Yeah, that's why this isn't a solo podcast. Otherwise, that'd be really difficult, because I wouldn't know what to talk to myself about.
Yeah.
I'd confuse myself, even though sometimes I have a split personality. So, gosh, if only I could work out what I'm thinking.
Yep.
No, that's a really good point, actually. Actually, bringing in others. It's not about the emphasis. It's not about you. It's actually about other people. And I think, and in today's society, that sometimes differentiates yourself between other people, because sometimes there are a lot of people where it is about them, and that's where they wonder why they're going wrong. It's not because that's not why people resonate with you. They resonate because it's about others to other people. You see a statistic on LinkedIn, like probably about 99% of people are just passive. They're consumers of the information on social media. That people consume. They don't contribute. So when you contribute, you're actually giving something back, as opposed to actually receiving. But if you've got your head in how you help others. So, and I think part of personal branding is all about giving something back, and through the channel that makes sense as well for you. So you know yourself that there are many different mediums that suit different people in different styles, and you just have to find that one that you're comfortable with and happy with.
Exactly. And I think even if you're not doing this externally, if you're only within your company, you say you're employed and you want to raise your profile, I think one of the easiest ways, it's not easy. A straightforward way, a simple way to do it, because nothing's easy, I believe, that's worth doing, is find out what are your boss's pain points and then work to try and resolve them. Again, it's the same mindset. Don't look at yourself, look at others, in this case your boss or your colleagues or anyone in the organization. See what are their pain points and what skill set do I have to help them resolve that. And then using that skill set, so whether it be writing better documentation, whether that be giving them a heads up of stuff, whether it be pulling together better time tracking stats or something, or helping them with their efficiency, whatever that might be. If you can do that and you can make their life happen, they might not say it to your face, but in their mind they'd be like, this is the person that's got my back, this is the person that I can rely on, and you've automatically raised your profile.
And going, I think in tandem with that, making sure you actually are working for an individual who appreciates that, because there are, yourself in life, there are most people will appreciate that, but there are others who will take that.
Yeah, there are people that won't, and there's obviously a lot of political games going on. But what I find is that even if people are selfish and politically minded, if they see that you're doing something for them, they will acknowledge. They might not vocally appreciate you, but they will acknowledge it, and they'll be like, well, this person makes me good. There are some people that obviously they feel a bit insecure, and they might feel threatened, say like, that's where sometimes you need to go about things a bit more tactfully. So again, you don't want to, just like your audience, you don't want to go to your boss or superior and say like, hey, here's the answer to this, you're doing this wrong, here's how you do it. Sometimes a more tactful approach, like, have you ever thought about this? And you plant the seed and then you walk away.
3 years later,
it's a fully grown tree.
It's exactly. A fully grown tree, or it's told you so.
Yeah.
But at least your conscience is clear.
Yes.
I think that's the key thing. Sometimes as long as we're in ability to express our view, whether that's taken on board or not is, there's only so much you can do, but it's not you, it's them kind of thing. So tell us a bit about your journey from let's call it, from when you were a backing singer all the way to being the front man on the radio. So what are kind of like the key triggers along that path? What was it that those defining moments that said, actually, you know what, I'm getting away from this desk job in a bank, and I'm actually gonna go and spread my word?
Yeah, I think so. I was always interested in creative writing, I suppose, as a kid. That was one of my many things. And at that time, blogging was kind of like a new thing. Everyone had their own website and they started to blog. And I thought, I want to start blogging or writing. So why didn't I write about security and sometimes make them a bit creative? So rather than just saying, here's how you do risk management, turn it into a story. Dave got into a car crash and this is what happened, and he could have transferred the risk or accepted the risk, or mitigate, put in place these compensating controls or whatever, and then it becomes a fun story. And again, I mean, and I still enjoy the process of writing in a more story-based or a more fun anecdotally based way, because I enjoy reading that kind of stuff. And I'm my own audience in that regard. Sometimes I go back and read like some of my previous blogs and stuff, and not all of them are great. Other times I actually like, that was decent. That I enjoyed that. It's something,
you're proud of.
Yeah, exactly. So I started that, and that was one of the first things that I thought, oh, you can actually resonate with people. It's not just for me. There's other people who sort of like say, oh, this is a good blog, I like this, I like how you explain this, I never thought of it like that, or can I borrow that analogy? And you absolutely, and I think that's where you start feeling that you do have a voice, you just need to put yourself out there.
I think one thing I picked up on that is obviously you're doing something that is subtly different in the industry to other people as well. So you will resonate in a different way compared to those people who are just posting about, no disrespect, there's always an audience for them, but who will post about the latest vulnerability, the latest hack, ... more new. It's almost like we're reading a news news feed rather than a thought piece or a different take on things.
Yes, and for me, I suppose the second step then after that, if we pull on that thread, is I was really, really into videos a lot. And YouTube was a big thing, but it started off as a big thing, and there was no one in security doing videos. And I thought, I'd really love to take that YouTuber type of vibe and make security videos about them. And it was just like my writing. It was just like fun, irrelevant, some inside jokes, some tongue-in-cheek stuff, what have you, just to get a point across. And again, it resonated with people, and I enjoyed the process of going through, like, how do you set up a camera? How do you use a light? How do you make something that's not just interesting in your head, but when you visually create it? And you learn about layering stuff like the video, the audio, the soundtrack, the color grading, and you start to realize everything has
color grading. Oh, that's
okay. Well, they're presets. I just select one that's
okay.
We make it look like Gladiator. So all of those things really, really help. And then it's this point where, like you said, it's like it's kind of different. It's only different because I made it for me.
Yeah.
And
your passion for creativity and your the joy in filmmaking and video making and humor and, oh, by the way, you just happen to know a bit about security. It's almost like that kind of vibe, isn't it? It's like, I just happen to know about this, but I actually love all this bit as well.
Yeah. And sometimes you see say like you go to a conference, see a presentation, and technically it's great, but you think, I could have read a white paper and it would have been exactly the same words presented in exactly the same format. And I don't think, personally, that's not why I go to see a live presentation. I go there for the experience. It's a bit like going to a concert live versus listening it to on Spotify. I'm not saying you have to go full out and be a concert, but I'm saying there's a different way in connecting with people when you're in the room with them. So if we were doing this podcast via online Zoom or something, we'd have a very different feeling than we're doing it here. And I can see you getting bored sometimes.
I can read you like a book. Yeah, you have to wear clothes.
I know, yes.
Those kind of things, yeah. But no, I get what you mean. I think that's kind of like, for me, the important thing is really the human connection side that you can't get over video, and that's why I consciously made the decision not to do it online. I'd much rather have the conversation in person.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming all the way from.
It's all right. I think on that human connection as well, I think if you make it for yourself, because that's the best audience you have probably, you stop making assumptions as to what so-and-so wants. Because if you start making that assumption, you're never going to get it right and it's going to be wrong. And the problem with that is you end up with, the problem with a bad assumption is you end up putting a ton of effort into something and you're looking at market research, you look, what's the optimal length of a video, where should it be presented, like, how can we trick the algorithm into getting it more boosting.
Yeah, you're driven by the wrong drivers. I think there are people out there who are driving from a commercial aspect, and so they need these little tweaks to get more subscribers, and actually, I think the way I like to think about it is, who am I trying to talk to? Yeah, almost like really just understand the audience, for want of a better phrase, not the audience today, but who will appreciate the kind of messaging. And if you do that, and you can just connect your message to the right kind of people, then, and it's good, it'll just grow. Yeah, it will. You if you're authentic and you follow, and we all work in small sub-industries, like there's the IT industry itself is like, but then cybersecurity is a fishbowl within that. And then maybe you work within a fishbowl within that fishbowl. Yeah. So you're not trying to reach the masses anyway, but you're trying to reach maybe one or two people who it will impact. And sometimes that's good enough. Yes, so we have 3 listeners, so that'd be great.
Excellent, yes.
So that's all it takes. Yep. As long as those 3 listeners take away exactly something from it, is great. That's what makes it so joyful in doing this, because it is about the right people tuning in. So just moving on slightly, so we're very much talking about marketing ourselves as individuals. How would you say, if it does, differentiate itself from marketing a business? What do you think are the similarities and differences are there?
So there are a lot of similarities. The difference with a business is that things are often stifled through decision by committee, and then
or indecision by
committee
by committees.
Yes, and you end up with lots of voices trying to compromise, and so you end up with stuff that's very bland because you don't want to offend anyone. And Chris Voss wrote a book called Never Split the Difference, and he's a former FBI hostage negotiator, and he talks about this. And one of the examples he gave is, like, say you're going out and you want to wear your black shoes, and your partner says, no, wear your brown shoes. And so you compromise and you wear one black and one brown shoe. It goes, neither of you are happy and you end up looking ridiculous. And I think that's the mistake a lot of organizations make when they do that. And I think individuals also make this mistake. When they start thinking too much about the audience or what they want, or what video is going to get me the most clicks, or what podcast, you sort of like end up losing your soul. And we really appreciate organizations that lean into their imperfections and they're not afraid of mildly offending people on the off chance. So you think like Innocent Drinks or Yorkshire Tea or these kinds of brands, they're so fun and engaging online. Do they ever offend people? Yes. They don't always get it right, but for the part, they have personality, they have soul, and you feel like you connect with it. And I think that's the real essence comes down to it. You want people to connect with the soul of as an individual or as a company.
That's so true. And I think even from my own experience, you are constrained by the corporate approach, the trying to please other people as well, in a way that is not just you're not just trying to please everyone, but no one at the same time.
Yeah.
And some organizations do get it right, but they are few and far between.
Yes.
I think the other thing around the difference between like the marketing of business and the marketing person is actually your shift of emphasis as well. So where individuals tend to market around not necessarily a service or a product, we're not trying to sell something per se. We're just trying to give, if we're doing it right, we're trying to give value, okay? And I think organizations, don't get me wrong, some are good at marketing to the value that they give, but a lot of them, you read between the lines.
Yes, yes.
You don't even need to read between the lines because it's actually on the line. We're selling you this, we're selling you that. Yeah. So it's driven by a slightly different dynamic as well. What's your view on a business brand being the combination of the personal brands of individuals?
I think that's really, really good. Some organizations do it. Now, there's some pros and cons to that. The biggest con is that if you allow a few individuals to become the voices of your brands, they can sometimes hold your brand hostage. So if they're leaving, they're taking all that brand power with them. If they do something, mistakenly tweet something or make a TikTok when they're drunk, that reflects poorly on the brand. So there's those kinds of constraints. But I'd say don't let the fear of those things stop you from employing that tactic, because I think that really helps you humanize your brand. I think it was last year, it might have been Williams F1 team or there was a brand, they had an intern in to run their social media, and they were posting their own stuff, as in like fanboying over everything, as well as doing the corporate stuff as well. So you look at the Instagram feed or their TikTok feed, there was like really high quality images of vehicles that you'd expect, mixed in with like, oh my God, there's Lewis Hamilton or whatever it might be. And I thought that was such a good way of going about it. It might have been Lotus. I'll have to look it up. But
candid photography.
Yeah.
Bit of street photography.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like, we all like these behind the scenes sort of shots. Yeah.
And I think a lot of brands don't let that human nature come into it. They stay all corporate-y. Yeah. It's all, sorry, not in our name,
yeah.
not in our name. And yes, it's a very well-structured brand, but there is no human soul to it, as you were saying.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually. So in the messaging around whether it's a personal brand or business brand, how important is consistency and clarity of messaging? How important is that? especially on a personal brand? Are you consistent?
I'm not.
Or you're consistently inconsistent?
I think it's consistency is kind of it takes its shape in many forms. So does that mean you have a regular publishing schedule, or does it mean your brand colors and logos and fonts are always the same, or does it mean you always sit here wearing the same outfit? Yeah.
Well, I do have a green shirt, you know.
Okay. I think all these things are important, but the most important thing is to be your authentic self. I think that's the most important consistency, because we all change our minds after a period of time. We all like, I used to think this, now I don't think this. That's part of growth or learning or what have you, and that's a good thing, I think. We see companies change their logos all the time. Oh, new year, every 5-10 years, let's change the logo, let's change the brand, let's change the what have you.
Let's change the recipe.
Let's change the recipe.
Oh, no.
Yes. So I think change is always going to happen. Sometimes you're going to make, go a year by creating like a podcast of every month or every 3 weeks or 2 weeks or every week. But that's not sustainable, especially for an individual, indefinitely. So you need to work out how you can create your schedule without burning out as well.
But also setting expectations. Well, do you really need to set expectations, because you have to be true to yourself, being authentic. So I've already kind of like set expectations that unexpected perspectives, the schedule is unexpected. When this goes out, it's going to be a surprise. But that's how going back to the burnout, the consistency, and making sure that you want to put something out there that you feel is authentic to you and of substance, rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. And I think there's a balancing act between that as well. Like, nothing's ever going to be perfect, so you got to hit publish at some point or another.
True.
But at the same time, to your point, don't just publish for the sake of publishing. If you've like written something and like it's not a good piece, don't publish it, or publish it but be happy with the fact that it's not perfect.
And actually, even on LinkedIn, you see people publishing very frequently, but the value that it gives to someone, you start to go, you're just doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, it's high noise, low value, especially now with AI, ChatGPT and what have you. Anyone can create like, hey, write me 50 LinkedIn posts, and like goes out one a day for the, you look attacked. Sorry, I didn't mean to attack you.
No, I feel like no, I did have a look into it, but then you start looking at it and you go, actually, that's great, but it's not me. There are people out there who are quite happy to do that because it's serving a different objective purpose, because it's an interpretation of them, I suppose. But for me, it's just not me.
Yeah.
And I like to think about what I'm going to write, and they come from my own soul, my own mind, and through my understanding rather than through a collaboration of other people's understanding. So for me, ChatGPT is great, but all it does is aggregates information that's already there.
Yep.
It doesn't actually create new ways of thinking or new thought. Yes, you may have thought about it, someone else may have thought what you're thinking, but it's not you.
No, and this is what, when you go through school or college, when you're given assignments to do, no one really ever goes back and reads their old assignments. Like, you done at university, you probably had a final year paper to do. I mean, you've probably never gone back. You might not even remember what you've done it on. The value of it isn't the output. The value of it is the effort you put into going through that process of learning, collecting the information, and writing it in your own words. That's the real value of it. Now, if you bypass all of that and just outsource everything to ChatGPT, and there's no effort or thought in it, you yourself have not learned. And I think that's a real shame, because I think that's one of the best parts of creating anything, is that you learn yourself.
100%. Even going through this process, at home I've set up my own podcast studio, got a roadcaster, all these things really to help me to understand what to do. Not because I'm going to do it every day, but that understanding and learning will help me become better because I'm passionate about it, but become better in what I do. I think it's the same for anything in life. Don't stop learning and trying things for yourself. Even if you may outsource some of it at some point in time, at least you understand why and what you're doing it for.
Yeah. I mean, you hear a lot of these stories of, you read about these stories about company founders, and even though they're the CEO then of the organization, and it's a massive company, like Amstrad or what have you, but Alan Sugar said he could still walk into the factory and know what every component is, what it does, and where it fits together. And you hear this about a lot of, like, Henry Ford famously also, like, he knew every part of the production line and what have you. And I think that's so important, because you could grow and you can automate and you can bring in machines and you can outsource, but if you don't understand how things are working, you don't need to be an expert, but you need to at least understand how things are put together.
I agree. I think, and it's also actually the journey of getting to the outcome is a lot more exciting sometimes than the actual output itself.
Yeah. So I was listening to this fitness YouTuber. Don't laugh too much.
Sorry, I just had something in my throat then.
I just listened to it. I'm in that information gathering phase at the moment. But he said something so profound, and he said, like, if you focus on the result, you're always going to be disappointed. But if you focus on enjoying the journey, you're always going to. You might not reach the exact destination you want, but you'll be content and you'll be happy, and every day is a win.
That resonates so much, because I can't remember who I was listening to, but it was a similar kind of approach, whereby if you set goals for yourself, whether they're financial goals or other kind of measures of success, sometimes you're doing that in a way that actually constrains you to actually doing what's right.
Yes.
And you may be setting those goals too low or too high. So, and it also places undue anxiety on you to achieve these goals, when actually you want to know the broad direction and travel, yes, but the journey and taking those incremental steps are a lot better than having that tangible goal at the end.
Yeah.
Because then what? People think you reach that goal, hey, done it, happy. Now what?
Yeah.
And when people start to realize those goals themselves don't necessarily make you happy. You see a lot of the successful entrepreneurs, okay? They don't stop. They don't have a goal and go, oh, done. They just carry on because they're enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
They're enjoying the challenge of growth, divestment, different ventures, different people, everything. It's not just, I want that.
Yeah. And I think when you look at, speaking of journey, taking it into the literal sense, you fly or you take the train. What are the criteria you look at when you book a flight or a train journey?
That's a very good question. At the moment, for a train, just get me there, because you don't really get much choice. You just go, I want to go from A to B. Is it more convenient than driving, or any other mode of transport? Because I do walk as well, So is it more convenient than driving? If I'm going into London or into the centre of London, driving's not really, unless you have a motorbike, that is.
That's it.
But I did go through a little. I did have a little toy with a Vespa once, but moved on. So I stick to train. So, but then when it comes to airlines, I think you're very much. Sometimes people are driven by the service, they're driven by the economics, or they're driven by the perception of exclusivity as well, right? Don't get me wrong, I've travelled in different styles, for want of a better phrase, but at the end of the day, you start to think about what's really important for you, and actually sometimes it's just getting from A to B, but that's for me, right? I just want to get from A to B, have a enjoyable, safe journey, and Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
It's not that difficult. But society places lots of stratification of services of everything. But why?
Because I think the airlines or the train companies market their services incorrectly. When you do a search for a flight, it will either give you the option of sort by price or sort by journey time, typically.
Correct. Yeah.
And their assumption is people want the cheapest flight at the shortest, which for most cases is fine. Now, what if they said to you, if you take this flight, it might be a bit longer, but you get a widescreen TV and you get a USB charging port behind your...
Ooh.
Yeah.
And free Wi-Fi.
And free Wi-Fi.
That actually works more than 1 megabit per minute, let alone a second.
On the trains, I think what they do right is they offer you the option of, do you want a quiet carriage? So you know you're going to go in there, and ideally no one's going to be on their phone loudly.
Oh, I thought it's just just like the single cubicle for
It's
one.
But they offer you, like, do you want to face the direction of travel? Do you want to face the other way? Do you want a table? Do you want a plug socket? And I think these things, they don't change the class of cabin you're on. It's economy or business, or first classes. But I think there's a lot of little factors that people don't take into account, that these are the things that really make the journey more enjoyable.
I know. Going back to the airlines, obviously about maybe 2 years ago, they stopped producing new A380s.
Yeah.
But to the customer, that's one of the best planes that you can fly on today, because they're so spacious and roomy.
Yeah.
You can sit in economy and feel like you're actually in a large home, and it doesn't feel stuffy. People value different things, but people don't have the option of selecting those different things.
Yeah.
It's driven by other drivers.
It is. I mean, I think if you look at flights to Orlando, why do most people go to Orlando? For Disney, and they're going with families. Why don't you put a little ball pit in the back of the plane? And you give kids like an allocated time for 10, 15 minutes, half hour during the flight.
And to be honest, why don't they change the uniform with Mickey Mouse ears? And, to make it like, actually, your trip starts the moment you leave the airport.
Yeah.
Assuming that everyone wants to go to Disney when they're going to Orlando.
Well,
right?
it's
a wild assumption, I know, but you can certainly section that off. But I think you're right. I think it's really understanding the audience, the customer.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting as well with airlines. I went to Cranfield Management School a little while back, and how airlines themselves differentiate themselves. They're very good at differentiating their brands in order to tier them to different market segments, exactly the same as insurance. So, like, you'll have multiple insurance brands owned by the same company, whether it's Churchill, Direct Line, no names mentioned, but I think Privilege, but they're all owned by the same company, but they differentiate by consumer market.
Yeah.
And I think if organizations start thinking more like that, but then resonating with what that customer wants, then that's a powerful.
So if you were to self-evaluate your own brand, are you like the A380, or are you the Ryanair barely held on with duct tape podcast?
To be honest, I have just launched my own airline. I think that's the way I like to look at it. It is. I think I've just gone out and bought myself a second-hand A380, dusted it down, refitted it, and just getting the crew together, taking off. But going back to your point, it's so much fun to enjoy the journey, to do that. It allows me as an individual to actually not be defined by a corporate identity that already exists. I'm creating it as we move forward, which is aligned very much to from my personal brand, it very much aligns to my values, my core values, what's important for me, and which has always been about, at this stage, about having the opportunity to share knowledge and give back in ways that historically I've done in different ways, but also create a platform for others to share their knowledge as well. So I've been on my own little personal brand journey, which you may have seen recently.
Noticed.
About maybe just about over 18 months ago, so I engaged with a personal branding agency, an agency called Simply Be. They were they were recently bought out by Hawk Media. They're a US-based branding agency. And I was going through a stage in my career. I naturally, from a career perspective, I naturally may not necessarily fit a stereotype. Well, I am me, right? We're all unique, right? But I've never been a person who's been a forever employee in multiple organizations. I've always had different strings to the bow, whether multiple businesses, different ventures, and employment as well. So, and different passions. So I felt like, okay, after everything that's gone on a personal level, how can I help shape myself to who, or help to understand who I was? And that journey, I went out to Chicago for a one-day workshop, had 10 people around the table really interrogating me in a nice way. But that helped at the end of that day, and it was a 3-month kind of journey with them all together. At the end of that journey, they helped me to understand more. They understood me more than I understood myself. And they played it back to me, and I'm going, wow. But that gave me the clarity in myself in terms of what's important for me, how I can make a difference, even if it's just a small difference, and how I could carry on being true to myself and just enjoy the journey. And, life's short, very short. We're just one speck. Don't know if you've heard this one before. Yeah, but we're just a small speck in the universe, and then that speck is time. We're that small speck in the universe and in time. So we have to make the most of what we do and just be able to do what we can, even in a small way. But that journey itself was great because it taught me about the importance of understanding your passions, what you want to communicate, how best to communicate, who you're trying to communicate to, and the methods by which you can communicate. So obviously through the podcast, through social media, LinkedIn, but also all tied together with around messaging, and then down to PR, and then other external social media amplification, all these different things. And just by understanding that, it's helped me understand myself, but it also has given me those skills that I wouldn't have normally had to be able to apply to some of my business ventures as well, to go, actually, that's a great way of thinking. Now, how can I utilize that in a business way or in any way?
Yeah.
But I would say it's a long-term game. I think yourself. I hope you do.
Yes.
It's just be consistent. Don't worry about what people think.
Yeah.
And just be true to yourself.
Trust isn't built overnight. It's not like something where you meet someone for the first time, you see one bit of content from someone and say, well, that's my guru now, and I'm going to follow. But also I think it's very, very important, the fact that we should take advantage of professionals to help us grow as well. For example, everyone knows eat healthy and work out a bit every day and you're going to be healthy. But most of us need the help of a personal trainer or a coach or a nutritionist at some point in our lives to really make that change, because it's not just about the knowledge, it's about how to practically implement it and have someone hold you accountable. So I think it's so good that you went through that process, whether you engaged some professionals to help, because you needed a lot of professional help.
Let's just say that engagement may need to continue into the future. No, but I think exactly. I agree. You always don't be afraid to seek, not help, it's seek support, guidance.
Yeah.
We're not experts on everything.
No.
And we're all learning.
But at the same point, the one thing I tell people to be wary of is pick your coaches and mentors carefully, because you want someone that can equip you with the tools to be yourself, and not someone that wants to make you a clone of themselves. So I think the best example is like TED, the talks. When they first started, I found them so interesting and engaging because everyone was just working it out. They'll say 18 minutes, go tell your story. And people would come up and they would tell their story in their own unique way. And then people started making a formula out of it. And now it's quite bland because everyone follows the same formula. Everyone comes on, they stand in a certain way, hold their hands in a certain way. There are parodies made about this. They start off with a quote that doesn't mean anything but sounds profound.
Yeah.
And it goes through that process, and it's like, you know what, this could have been so good, but you can tell that person has been coached within an inch of their life.
That's so true. I think I've seen a really good parody video. It's done by a comedian. I'm trying to remember, but it's a parody of "I am a thought leader." So there's a guy on stage. He comes up to stage, says, "I am a thought leader. Pace, 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 pace. I am now pacing across the stage because I am a thought leader. I have a presentation that has 3 points because I know that." You need 3 points to present to. I will take a pause. So it's a real good parody of how you as you said, you overcoach to be formulaic.
Yes.
To be same, to conform to some kind of expectation, when actually just be you.
Yep.
I think that's probably the key point about personal branding is just be you. But don't just be you and not share it with the world. Be you, but in a way that you can reach out, because you can have your own personal brand, but if only you know about it, it's not really, it's very personal, it's private.
You say that, and yes, that's what I've gone out and that's what most people go out and do.
Yeah.
But I think even if at first stage you are just yourself and you know what your personal brand is, I think that's really good enough for a lot of people. Even that is good enough.
True.
That they know who they are and they're still adding value to people close to them. It might not be the whole world, but even if you change one person's life who's closest to you, could be your child or a parent or a neighbor or partner or whoever, I think that's really good as well. I
think that's great. I think, yeah, you're right. It's the butterfly effect. I think we underestimate. I think do what you want to do. Don't feel like you need to. Yeah. Do what is comfortable for you. So, what have been some of your main challenges on your brand? What are some of the kind of like pitfalls that people should watch out for?
So I think one of the big pitfalls especially if you work for a large organization and you start doing something on the side, people ask questions. They're like, is there a conflict of interest? Are you wasting company time doing this?
Okay.
Are you doing this? Or what if you say something that not on brand, but people associate it and interpret it as being the voice of the brand because you work here. So say someone, and you can understand where they're coming from, because sometimes people will tweet something out stupid, say they say something racist or sexist or something, and then you find out they work for McKinsey's or whoever. Yeah, I'm just using them as an example, and they're easy to please. McKinsey, please do not sue me. But they want to be mindful of their brand and what have you. And also, I think even if you don't work there, the other thing is like when you're being authentic and yourself, not everyone's going to enjoy that. Not everyone's going to like it, and you might feel like you might lose some opportunities. You might go for an interview or something and think like, that person doesn't like the way I podcast, and they don't like.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny because, again, another podcast I listened to, they talk about in the politics, you're either to the left or to the right, and there's always someone that likes you and hates you. But if you're down the middle, sometimes that if you're centrist, it's like you've got no friends, because it's almost like you just don't agree with me. So it is a bit like that.
Everybody hates me.
Everyone hates me. I love me, but everyone else hates me.
I mean, yeah, that's right. I mean, and this is where like that authenticity really plays a big part. Like, do you believe in what you're saying, or are you saying something to chase the clicks? And if you believe in what you're saying, then it's defensible. I think you just need to develop some subtleness around how you deliver that message, because just going straight up and saying Microsoft released this and Microsoft are wrong and they're horrible, that's not going to endear, you're not going to make any friends like that. But if you say, okay, they done this, but maybe they could have considered this, or here's some implications that maybe they didn't consider, blah, 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 it turns out to be a very balanced review. You see this a lot with on YouTube with tech reviewers. A lot of them love to bash products. Oh, here's the new latest Samsung phone. It's rubbish. This is wrong. This is wrong. And they never want to get another review phone. Then, people are going to view them as negativity. But if you look at someone like Marcus Brownlee, MKBHD on YouTube, he's been doing tech reviews longer than probably anyone. And I think one of the secrets of his longevity is that he's very fair and balanced. Even when he's throwing criticism at product, he starts off with the positives and what have you. And he's built up trust over time. So now when he reviews a product, I'm sure a lot of people really trust his opinion because he goes through it in a certain way. And you think, okay, he's always been honest. And you know that it's not a paid sort of like sponsorship deal where someone's saying, here's our product, now give us a favorable review. Yeah. But again, that takes time.
Yeah, I think time and patience, and I think that's also very important. Just the whole, don't rush the journey. Let the journey be the journey. I think sometimes people are rushing to be seen or be heard, but just go with the flow.
Yeah.
So, what is next for the Javvad Roadshow? What's the next? What's your journey gonna? Obviously, a crystal ball, or maybe you've got a plan. Where do you see yourself going on your personal journey?
There's a lot of things that go into what you're doing. I think earlier on in my career, I was more active in a different way. And I think as you grow older and there's other priorities in life, families, kids, whatever, you have your own health to focus on, you have other things you want to do outside of work. I think those become important to focus on as well. But I think there's also a way you can bring those elements in. And if you look on LinkedIn now, or other social media, but let's say LinkedIn, there's lots of security professionals around our age group, plus minus 5-7 years or whatever you, who are going through like maybe health sort of transformations. So they're like, hey, I just got a warning. I got like irregular heartbeat, high blood pressure, diabetes, what have you. And then they're like, look, I've lost like 20 kilos in the last year or something. I took up running, I took up cycling and what have you. And I think none of that detracts from who they are as a person, because this is also really useful stuff. I know people in the industry who, well, unfortunately have passed away. So you get to that stage and that really, okay, there's people who've gotten married, people who've gotten divorced, people who've had kids, people who've lost kids, people who've kids who've gone through like severe health issues. Themselves, people have gone through health issues. So I think this is the next phase of that authenticity or that journey, is like there's more to life than just work. And how do you create that balance so you don't die with regrets, or you don't get to that point in life where you think like, you know how they say like no one ever says on their deathbed, I wish I'd spent more hours at work. Yeah,
true.
I think you want to say like, have I spent my energy in the right way? Have I spent it with the right people? Or have I spent it with energy vampires who've just like, wasted my time and energy and what have you? And so there's been a lot recently in the last few years, people talking about mental health emotional resilience, that kind of stuff. And so security will always be there. My strapline has always been security, life, cynicism.
So you're moving more towards the life and cynicism?
So yeah, I think the life part has been there. Maybe introduce a bit more of that into it. Turn into one of those old men yelling at cloud, like, you kids don't know how easy you have it nowadays.
I'm intrigued, but I know you'll still be part of, you'll still be in the limelight in some way, shape or form of your journey. So I think one of the things I think about is as you kind of like as we've moved through all those experiences, it is about giving back as well. When we say giving back, I mean helping next generation or helping others to leverage the benefit of our experience so that they still make the same mistakes, don't get me wrong, but at least if we can help in any little way, I think that's important. So what would you say are some of the top tips for people who are just starting out on their journey in cybersecurity? I think we've both had a top tip about raising our profile. I know we spoke earlier. It's like, yeah, that's great. What does it mean? Raise your profile.
Yep.
But what would you say some of the top tips would be?
I'd say like one is like find problems. Figure out what the real problems are that people have, whether it be your boss, whether it be your clients, your colleagues, whoever, yourself, and then try to work out solutions for that. I think that's a really good place to start from, because if you start solving something that's a real root cause, what's the root cause? If like say, you guys are always overworked, what's the root cause of that? There's normally something upstream that's causing that. If you can work that out, that really, you can become the hero of the day. Not so the hero of the day.
Work on the weekend to work that out.
Work on the weekends, work that out. The other thing I think, and a lot of people who are new in the industry is like, I don't know what to talk about. I've got nothing useful to say. I've got nothing useful to contribute. And I was like, no, you have stuff to say. You have stuff to contribute. Everyone is probably, a lot of people are thinking the same, but you will need to be the first one to vocalize that. So if you're new in the industry, for example, and you've come across these new challenges or terms, chances are someone's already figured it out. So why don't you blog or post something on LinkedIn or make a video, do a podcast saying, look, I'm trying to work out X, Y, and Z and why this doesn't happen in this way and why it happens this way. Here are some resources I've found. Here's what I've understood so far. And here's where I'm at the journey. Stay tuned for part 2. And what you'll see is in the comments, people will be incredibly helpful. What people don't like is when someone just reaches out to someone and says, hey, you're an expert in this field. Will you be my mentor? Or can you help me raise my profile? And no one can help anyone raise their profile. And I think also people get so many of these sorts of requests. They don't want someone that just comes and says like, spoon feed me.
Yeah.
But if you go to someone or publicly and say like, I figured this part's out by myself, what are the next steps? You'll find so many people willing to help because they're like, I like that approach. I like that attitude.
I know what you mean. You want to help those who've already got that fire inside themselves, rather than just doing it because it's lazy or easy, or thinking, as you said, they'll solve my problem. Not just solve my problem, they'll help me make it happen.
Yes.
And I think so many people, certainly younger people out there, they have it within them. They just need to have the belief within them that they have it within them. Don't be afraid to make mistakes as well.
No.
Make mistakes, take risk as well. I think in your 20s especially, that's the age, and certainly from a professional perspective, that's where you can move around, try different things, and you don't necessarily have you may have a student loan, but you don't have all those other constraints that hold people back. So I think that's probably my key thing is really just don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be, small steps as well.
Yes.
Just start. Whatever it is, just start.
That's right. And also, and this is something I heard from someone, and this resonated, and they're like, follow your passion is often the worst advice you can give someone, because, for example, the world's or the London's top consultant, accountant or something, was not passionate about accountancy for consultancies or legal accountancy when they were in school, maybe not in university, maybe never. So what happened? They found themselves in that field, and then they got some experience, so they sort of understood it. They're still not passionate about it. It's a job at that point. But then what did they do? They probably started writing a bit about it. They maybe made some presentations, spoke at some of their accounting industry events about the topic. They got promoted. They wrote a book about it. They got invited to keynote at places. They had book signings about it. They got their papers published. And 20 years later, they're like, I'm really passionate about my job. I am the best legal accountant in the UK.
Wow. Did it take them 20 years to realize that, or just...
No, I think that's when it's really easy at that point to say, I'm passionate about my field. But what you shouldn't ignore is the time it takes you to get there. So I think if you're new in the industry and you're like, I'm not passionate about cybersecurity, or I'm not passionate about whatever networking or whatever field you're working in, then that's not the thing. That, again, you're focusing on the destination as opposed to the journey. Think about that journey, and eventually you'll find an area where you're good enough. You have the experience, you have the body of work to support you, and then you'll find that, you know what, I'm really passionate about this because I'm kind of good at this.
I think also as well, no, that definitely makes sense. I think also understanding your core values as well is important. So aligning whatever you do has to align with those, because that's, if you align with that. And it's about people at the end of the day. Sometimes it's about working with people that you actually care about and like and enjoy, and can bounce off each other as well. Yeah. And you'll go far.
Yeah. Or people that pay you a lot of money for you to ignore that you hate them and they hate you.
Yeah, I think some people still, I think a lot of people are driven by financial reward. Don't get me wrong, it's important, but it's
not everything. No, I say that as a joke. Please don't take me seriously when I say that. Money is great, but after a while, the charm of money wears off. Like, you might have a job that you think, yeah, this is paying me really well. But if you dread going in every day, if you don't like those conversations, that's going to take its toll.
I see it quite a lot as well. Is there are even friends of mine who have become in a position where they're trapped as well. They've got to a stage whereby they can't conceptually afford to do something different to what they're doing because of where they are on their journey and the lifestyle they've built up. So sometimes you just have to be wary of, for me, it's being wary of the path you choose and balancing that with the life and freedom and time, because time is precious. Going back to your point about importance of life, family, those key people around you, that becomes more and more important. As well, it should always be important, but knowing where to spend your time is very important.
I mean, they're the people that are gonna miss you the most if you're not around. That you leave a void for them. Other people will leave.
Is that what they've told you?
Other people will leave a one post on LinkedIn saying, I knew Mark, he was a good guy, or what have you, or try to gain kudos for them, so try to put the spotlight on themselves. I once went with Mark on a journey and this happened and that happened and what have you, and that's why. But then no one really remembers you after that, beyond that.
Yeah, that's so true as well. I think, and that's what holds people back. They would talk about, like, and if you put it into perspective, actually, in a generation or two, no one will know who you are. So just stop waiting. Be happy now.
Yeah.
Don't wait.
Yeah. I mean, someone just asked me the other day, like, how often have you thought about the late Queen Elizabeth? And I was like, I've not. It's only because the new note came out and there was like King Charles on it. And I was like, you're right. And she was like, she was the monarch for like all your life. Like, as long as you remember, she was everywhere and she was the most prominent and wealthy and everything. But
she's doing all right for herself, yeah.
But, she goes and you forget about even everyone. Like, so what's the point?
Okay, thank you. What's the point? We'll leave it on that note.
Yeah, what's the point?
So what was the point of that conversation? But It was, to be honest, it was a really good conversation, Jav. I really appreciate you coming into my office. We've got rid of the fire for you, the fireplace.
Yes,
We thought,
thank you.
We thought it was a bit too cozy last time, but we'll open the windows next time.
Yeah.
Get some breeze in. But anyway, thank you all for watching and listening. And until next time, thank you.